Hey, welcome back to episode number 111. Or is it 110 and a half? I don't know. You decide. But you can find the show notes at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/111 because that's what I'm going to call it, episode 111. And it is with our guest from last week, Jacob of Tasting Anarchy, of California in Exile, of Chillderburg, of any other number of things. But he's back today to finish up that episode we started the other day, and I think you guys will enjoy it. It's a bit longer, and really kind of dug into some of the community side of things. How do we sort of develop community? How do we grow it? How do we create it? And I think it's interesting. I think it's very interesting. I think it's something you guys should all pay attention to. And if you find it intriguing, go check him out at the Californian in Exile podcast, which I will link to in the show notes. So I do a little housekeeping in the beginning here. Go over to patreon.com/libertyhippie, sign yourself up there. Go leave a review on iTunes because that's always fun to do. Tell me what your favorite flavored pickle is. And I don't know. I'll send you something. Seeds. Just let me know. It'd be funny. It'd be really funny. At least I would find it amusing. What else have I got for you? I've been putting up some videos on Odyssey, and I've been posting that link in the show notes as well. That is on the library platform there, and a little different than YouTube. Same idea, but much more decentralized, free speechy. They're not going to censor you for posting things. And not that anyone would censor anything I post, but it's the principle that matters. So that's all for right now. Let's go plant those liberty seeds again with my guest, Mr. Jacob Linzy.
Happy with no teeth. Happy here in hibernation. Slurping on a peach. Staring at the situation. Key at my foot. Meowing out a conversation. Rocking back and forth. That's my only destination. Old man on the back porch. Old man on the back porch. Old man on the back porch. And that old man is me. Old man on the back porch. Old man on the back porch. Old man on the back porch. And that
Russian collusion, so it's in Russian.
I figured it was, but I didn't want to sound too uneducated.
Right. Yeah. It's three, as according to my wife, who's Ukrainian. So, and it's this year the theme is Russian collusion. The theme doesn't go anywhere beyond me saying it, but we're going to have like last year it was Daddy Time was the theme, but that was it. Like there was nothing beyond that. And then the first year was the theme was Chillderburg, not a cult. And so this year though we've it's going to be what it should have been last year except for COVID. So last year before the whole COVID thing, I had it all planned out. It was going to be much closer to Austin, although we liked the venue, so we're going to actually do it at the venue we did it last year again, which is about 45 minutes outside of Austin, about 50 minutes west of Austin, at Muleshoe Bend Recreational Area. The park is awesome, and it's May 29th through 31st. It's is that Labor? What weekend is that? It's a holiday weekend. I can't remember which holiday, but it's a 3-day weekend for most people.
Memorial Day? Or is that,
might be Memorial Day. It's a 3-day weekend for normies. I work from home, so I always forget which days are holidays and which ones are not. So it's Muleshoe Bend Recreational Area. We've got tentatively, so I don't necessarily want to announce it yet. I'm in communication finally with somebody who can tell me yes to have a stage at a local establishment, and
very cool.
And he's agreed to it, so I'll announce this. Is Robbie the Fire Bernstein of Part of the Problem fame is going to come do some comedy, and Owen Glass, which is a libertarian band here in Dallas, they're going to come and do a set as well, and possibly my uncle Paul Mars Black of 1980s hair metal fame is going to come and do a set maybe. He says he's going to. We'll see. He's much more Southern Californian than I am. He's a true believer in COVID, so we'll see what happens with that. He agreed to it a while ago, and I messaged him recently, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." But then he had a bunch of questions about like my COVID precautions, and I was like, I don't really believe in any of that. And he was like, oh, that's right. And so and then we also have a local comedian. His name is Brian Breckenridge. He opened at the local Hyenas for the dude who got fired from SNL. I went and saw him, and he was really good. Shane Gillis. So he had that big controversy where they fired him for being racially insensitive or something like that. And before he was hired, before he appeared on a single episode, they fired him.
Yes, I remember that now.
Yeah. And he came locally, and he was really funny. But one of the guys that opened for him, that was the local opening act, was also really funny and was a Ron Paul guy. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. So after the show, I went and asked him to come and perform at Chillderburg, and he was like, I would love that. He's like, I've got like a whole hour of libertarian and conspiracy jokes, but nobody else gets them. So I was like, that'll be perfect.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah, we're gonna have, so it's gonna be that, and then it's gonna be the same fun we always do at Chillderburg. It's next to the lake, so you can go and just jump in the lake because it is Texas. So by that time, it's gonna be like 100 degrees. So when you're hot, go jump in the lake, and then the rest is just like sitting around, sharing food, sharing booze. If you're not a booze drinker, sharing, whatever other drinks are there. We do kind of, really food sharing a lot. People bring stuff. You're responsible for your own food. So if there's not enough to go around, then that's on you. But usually people bring a little bit of extra and are happy to share. We had like a big last day cook where everybody had just a little bit left. So we all just kind of like brought, it was, leftover hamburgers, leftover hot dogs, eggs, bacon, like people had like parts of onions still left, parts of peppers, and just kind of put it all on the griddle and cooked it up together. And just, the last 20 people or so that were there, we cooked it up. This year should be a lot bigger. I mean, I had almost 100 people signed up to go last year, and then COVID happened and everything was canceled. So, and we were actually canceled because our original location told us we couldn't come, and so I had 2 backups. I'm a planner, so I always have backups for things. And so so I was like, okay, no problem. It's canceled at this location. I called up the other one. They were like, oh, well, we're actually the same park system as that one. So when they're closed, we're closed. I was like, oh, this is poor planning on my part. My third backup was private. It was a private RV park, and I called them up, and they went, oh, no, we have no idea what's going on with this COVID stuff. This is kind of close to the beginning. This was same time last year. And they were like, we don't know what the liability is or anything like that. We're not going to do it. And so I just called to find a place. And finally, this park, Muleshoe Bend Recreational Area, which is owned by the Lower Colorado River Authority, which is, I think, federal. I don't know for sure, but they were like, yeah, we're not closing. We don't care. And and when we got there, there was like signs up everywhere about masks and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I'm worried. And like the lady who runs it, because it's like usually like a retired couple, they live in an RV or something and they run it. I got there early and I went and pulled up and I was like, hey, are there any like restrictions? She's like, just be polite and quiet and don't bug us and do whatever you want. And
Nice.
So that's basically what it was. And just had a good time. I think we had close to 40 people, raised a couple $100 for freeross.org. That's our kind of main focus, is to raise some money for Free Ross, and just had a good time. I think it's really important for internet people, especially internet like freedom people. You don't have to be specifically a libertarian or an anarchist or whatever you want to call yourself. Just I think it's really good for people to get offline sometimes and see each other in person. And it's really cool to see people who maybe know each other online a little bit, but it just clicks as soon as they get to the place. They're all friends. They're all, talking politics, or not even talking politics. Sometimes it's just, talking recipes, talking, like weird stuff. And, everybody's got their own craft. You said you had Agora on. Agora came last time. Big hit. We also had some other people who made some mead, brought down Stateless Cook. I don't know if you know him. Yep. He's up in North Dakota.
Yeah, I had him on a while ago too.
Yeah, he's great, and he made a mead. He's also a great cook. It's a lot of fun. It's just people, it's really. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but it's we all have our own filter, because it's like, if you don't believe in the state and you go out somewhere and something very benign comes up and people are talking about it, and you're like, you're both retarded, like in your head. And then they're like, what do you think? And you're like, well, I don't believe in the government at all. Like, it's weird. It's a weird thing, because it's like, okay, let's try to unpack this. I mean, like, I'm still trying to unpack this for my family. And like, I've been an anarchist for, 13, 14 years. And so it's like, it's a weird thing to kind of try to unpack, especially if you don't know the people very well. And so I think there's some degree of like discomfort just in regular everyday society. And so it's kind of nice to sort of just be around your own people, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. Just like people that are accepting of like whatever your belief system may be. Right. And, like you said, right, and it doesn't have to have a label. It doesn't have to have a name, right? It's just this sort of idea that, like, personal autonomy, it's just kind of there, and it's. I appreciate that.
It's great. I mean, it's extremely. Other than like doing the organizing part, which is a little bit stressful, up until the point that people arrive for me. Cause like, as it leads up, I'm always like, oh, what could go wrong? And like, did I plan for this? Did I plan for that? And then once like it starts happening, it's just, it's awesome. It's just super relaxing. Everybody's super cool. Like we've never had we've only had 2 years of it, but like just people get along so well, so quickly. It's awesome. And like, and everybody's pretty good natured. We do razz each other a little bit. We had crowdfunded government. Are you familiar with him? He's up in Chicago. He came down for both of them. And we joked about him being a minarchist and stuff like that. But there's lots of minarchists that come too. It's just generally liberty oriented, and just great sport, just tons of fun, really fun to be around. He was there. Of course, Car Campit is a co-founder. He doesn't really do much of the organizing, but he did come up with the idea originally in a drunken stupor that he doesn't fully recall. But he did come up with it, and I ran with it. And he's just a lot of fun. We do some, yard sports. I brought bocce ball and volleyball last time. We didn't actually get to play volleyball, but we did play bocce for a little while. I also have jazzminton, which is badminton, but with light up balls instead of, or light up shuttlecocks instead of regular shuttlecocks.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, just a lot of fun. People just bring interesting things. So
I imagine
Cotton Argus brought he brought a tinfoil cowboy hat, which was fun. And it's just fun. A lot of internet jokes, but jokes that are inclusive. Like, people get them, they're funny, and really just a cool group of people. Just a lot of fun.
That sounds like a good time. Really does. Now, and your new pod, I guess it's new. It's new. I'd call it new. It's
well, and it's new because I also don't put out episodes very often.
All right, so I'm interrupting the show today. It's got to be important. Trust me, it is. I'm up here every week, speaking freely, encouraging you all to espresso yourself, having mind-changing conversations, planting little rebellion seeds that will grow into giant pumpkins of persuasion. Why am I up here? Because I love to run my mouth. Because I believe in free, uncensored speech. That's why. Because without the innate right to speak my mind and gather at will, the ability to communicate and exchange ideas disappears. And I can't think of a better way to exchange these ideas than over a delicious cup of coffee with the people that matter most. So together, with John Odermatt over at Finding Freedom, we've teamed up to create Run Your Mouth Coffee, to bring you the tantalizing coffee you need to get the uncensored speech flowing. Check us out at rymcoffee.com and use promo code Homestead to get 10% off your first order. That's rymcoffee.com, promo code Homestead. So that California in Exile, I've listened to the last couple episodes here. You're kind of talking about community. I'm curious, like, how do you, because I'm constantly on that struggle to try to find and build community in my local vicinity, right? Like I'm kind of, I don't want to say stuck, but like the prospects of me moving beyond 5-10 minutes exceptionally low, right? It's not going to happen. But you guys were talking about kind of almost, I don't want to say expanding Chillderburg, but kind of taking this idea of Chillderburg and extending it into something else. I'm just kind of curious where you are on that. Like what?
So there's
some of your thoughts on building.
It's going to happen. So my wife and I are mostly my wife is very good at encouraging me to do stuff and making them happen. So she set a date for, and I'm hoping I'm getting this right. She's in the other room, so she might be, but it's, I think it's 07/27/2027. That's she might be able to correct me. That's right. No, she says that's right. Yes. So that's the goal date. And that is our date for her and me moving out to the Chillderburg town property. What other people are doing, that's going to be up to them. The model that I want to use is and we're still kind of working this out a lot. It's a lot of research, a lot of just money, money gathering and stuff like that. We're at like a weird point in U.S. history where this is sort of something that my old roommate, Nate Classic, and we used to talk about this all the time when we were roommates. Like, oh, it would be great if we had like a town of people who were chill and not like lame. and it always came from like just having to deal. We live in Virginia Beach. It's a pretty heavy cop town, and the cops are not
friendly.
They're friendly. They're just like dicks. So like I had an aquaponics system in my garage when we lived out there, and I would open the door so that I could get some breeze to go through, so that because in the garage it gets stuffy and stuff. And I had cops come over there like 4 or 5 times being like, "Are you growing marijuana?" I'm like, "No, like clearly not. Why would I open the garage door?"
I'm growing marijuana in my garage, opening the garage door for everybody to see. Guys, come check it out.
Yeah, this is okra, these are peppers, this is strawberries, and in these tanks are 64 tilapia. So like you can see it. Do you have a permit? Do you have a permit for that? Actually, I do. So because you have to get a permit for tilapia in Virginia, but yeah, which is weird, but they do willingly grant it. So, anyways, so we used to talk about this all the time, where we're like, this would be really great if it doesn't have to be permanent for everybody. It could be like vacation property, or it can be just one of the things he always talked about was like a school kind of like where you can go out and learn certain things like aquaponics. Like I could teach basics of aquaponics. Like I did it for several years. I raised fish to maturity and ate them. I can do basic. I built the whole system and designed it myself. So I can do some of the basics of that. He was more of like a hippie. So he would be like, I'm going to teach Reiki or spirit something. I don't know. He's kind of a hippie guy, but nice guy, also really, really great roommate. And so we used to talk about this all the time. And so like, this is something I've kind of mulled around in my head for a while. And then when I got married to my wife, we really liked Chillderburg, and we were driving back, I think the first time, or maybe we were driving back the second time. I don't remember. We were driving at some point, and she's like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Like, I wish we just didn't have to like live around people where we had to deal with like a lot of bullshit. Like we could live around like the Chillderburg people because they're really cool and stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, why don't we just start a town? And she's like, you can do that? And I was like, I think so. I don't know. Let's look it up. Let's find out. So it turns out in American history, there's a lot of this. Like there's a lot of people. And, I think we're taught, and that maybe this goes back to the homeschool aspect. I think we're taught in public school a lot that building your own community is utopian. It never works out. It doesn't work for all these various reasons or whatever. But I started looking into it a lot, and there are actually several pretty old towns that are intentional towns. And the one that I like their model the best so far is in North Carolina. There's a town called Silo. And so one of the reasons I like it, and I had known actually about this town, I didn't realize this is how it started though. I knew about it because it's a Quaker town, and I'm Quaker. So, I just knew it existed. I didn't realize that it was its whole structure and stuff like that. So, Silo is a corporation that was founded in, I think, either 1927 or 1937. And it, the guy who bought it, he bought the land, he incorporated the property, and you don't actually buy your plot of land, you lease it from the corporation. And it's a lifetime transferable lease. So you effectively own it. You can do whatever you want on the property. And there's the reason they did this is because being incorporated offers certain tax advantages and certain protections from local and state government and federal government to some degree. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the leaseholder and the property owner's kind of protection because you own the lease, and you also get some of the corporate protection and tax advantages of corporation. So they have that structure, and what's nice about it is that you do effectively own it because you can put it in your will. You can transfer the lease to your descendants, and it's a one-time payment. It also has a buyout clause, so you actually are not allowed to just sell it to somebody else. You have to sell it back to the corporation, or the corporation can agree for you to sell it to somebody else. So this kind of gives a great deal of control about who comes in to the community. So that, and this is one of the concerns that, when we were sitting around the fire at Chillderburg Dose, discussing what we would want to do for, I guess we did come up with this idea after Chillderburg 1 because we were talking about it at Chillderburg Dose. So we were thinking about, like, how do we not be the Waco people, the Branch Davidians? How do we make this, like, how do we integrate ourselves into the community to some degree, but also make it so that a bunch of commies don't move in and change the community that we put all of our resources into building and stuff like that. And I think CELO's model has proven for the last almost 100 years that their model works. They can do it. It's corporation. And because it's Quaker. So one of the things that's kind of quirky about Quakers compared to a lot of the other sort of Protestant branches, I guess, is everything is done on unanimous consent in a Quaker meeting, or that's their church as a meeting. So if one person in the community says, I don't like this guy, I don't want to let him in, then that guy just doesn't come in. He's got to spend more time in the rental property or whatever, trying to win that guy over, I guess. Right. So like so that's kind of how it works. I mean, when I was at the meeting that I was part of when we lived in Virginia Beach, it took almost a year of discussion for them to decide about putting an air conditioner into the meeting. Because this meeting had been there since the 1800s. And we had people that were over 100 years old in the meeting who had been in the meeting their entire life. And they were like, I don't really see any need for an air conditioner. We can just give that money to the homeless. And because there's a pretty big homeless community at the beach in Virginia Beach. And that's what they always wanted to spend the money on. They were like, well, no, let's help out the homeless. And there were some kind of younger people. And by younger, the average age was about 90. So like by younger, I mean like the 70-year-olds were like, I want an air conditioner. And so what this model kind of encourages people to do is, if you can't get community consensus on something, it encourages for you to do it on your own, to get permission to do it on your own. So what ended up happening was with the air conditioner was it wasn't going anywhere for about a year. And so one of the guys finally was like, fine, I will buy and pay for the air conditioner to be installed if you just give me permission. And everybody was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We don't want to spend meeting money on it. We want to spend meeting money on charity. And so that's what ended up happening. And that always happened with things like cleaning up the grounds. And a lot of that stuff is that it would go in a meeting, they would talk about hiring somebody, and it would usually end up with somebody going, I'll pay for it, or I'll do it. So it really encourages a lot of like personal responsibility, I think. And so in a town setting, that would encourage, instead of people being like, okay, well, we're going to raise taxes in order to build this park or whatever. If somebody really wants a park, then they'll go like, you know what, I'm going to use a corner of my leased property and I'm going to build a park. Will you at least approve a improvement clause on my lease? So that's one of the other things that CELO does, is that if you do an improvement to your property and the community approves that it is an improvement, that is added to your buyout price.
Okay.
So that you don't lose, like if it's a permanent thing, you don't lose the value. So if you're like, I have this house here and I want to put on these solar panels, and these solar panels will depreciate X amount over 10 years or whatever, I'd like to be approved to add that into my buyout, depreciated over 10 years or whatever. And then the community could go, no, that is an improvement, because if we buy you out, we can sell that and add that to the price. And that's something that's logical. But if you're like, I want to put a big, giant, I want to put a big statue of Bigfoot, like this guy here on my property, people, and they're like, I want to add that, $10,000 to my property value. People would be like, well, it's cool, we like it, but it's not really valuable. So so like,
take it with you.
So this is kind of the working idea that I've got. It's funny too, like I was saying, is that we're at this like weird time, especially I think in the COVID year. People kind of went, I can't trust my city, my town, my state to allow me to make a living, to allow me to live a semi-normal life, to allow me to prosper as like a human being. And I need to be around people I can trust. I think that's kind of been the theme of this year. I think low trust has been the theme of this year. But I think that people's realization of needing to be in an area where they can trust their neighbors has been highlighted to like the plasma degree. It's very bright at this point that you need to be around people you can trust. And unfortunately in the modern America, whether it's, romantic thinking or not, I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in a small town. Pretty much we could trust anybody. I could go knock on any door and ask for help and they would help me. When we moved into this neighborhood, I like my neighbors, but I went and tried to introduce myself to a bunch of them and they just not interested. They got their own lives and that's fine. And they're just kind of isolated in their homes away from the rest of them. I talked to there's an older guy who lives down the street and he's like the neighbor, because it came up when we were talking. He's like, I don't know what happened in the neighborhood. It used to be, and he's in his 80s now, but he's had the house for 50 years. And he's like, when I had kids, we had block parties. The kids would go out, they'd go to each other's houses and play. And like, I knew my neighbors. If like I was doing yard work, somebody would come over and go, hey, do you need some help? And, they'd help out for a little while. Or if, we knew that there were widows in the neighborhood, we would go help out the widows and stuff like that. And he's like, I don't know what happened. It's just nobody talks to each other anymore. Nobody's out in their yard anymore. All of the property is pretty much maintained by crews of Mexicans, basically, that, migrant work. Well, I don't know if they're migrant workers, but just a big truck with a whole bunch of Mexican guys will show up at the start of the street and they will just take care of almost all of the yards in the neighborhood in one day. Nobody's out in their front yard taking care of it anymore. So you don't see each other anymore. Right. Everybody's in their backyard. It's weird. It's a weird world that we live in. And I think I think that this year is just kind of like, I love my neighborhood. I like it aesthetically. I like being in a neighborhood. And that's another thing that's kind of going through this process of thinking about Chillderburg town is like, I've realized I'm a townie. Like, I don't think I'm meant to be like out in the way wilderness. I think I'm meant to be in the suburbs. Like, I like it. It feels good. And you know what? Suburbs are designed to be very comfortable. They're designed to mimic, all of the commercialization of the United States after World War II was this outstanding research and development in what makes people comfortable. I'm like, even down to like the way that the front of your house is designed is purposely designed to look like an inviting face. Like it's supposed to make you see a smile. Like most doors, it's the door and two windows. And it's supposed to be the eyes looking in and smiling kind of, or being at least welcoming. The front of a car, the headlights, and usually they curve up. It looks like a smile. Like all of this stuff is whether there's books about it. So clearly it's intentional, but all of this marketing was done to make people very comfortable. And I think that can be applied in a different way. And that is to make people comfortable and independent. I think that's kind of part of the problem with the post-World War II expansion of the suburbs of the United States is that it was subsidized and not designed to encourage health and community and all that sort of stuff. I think that I don't, like I'm saying, this is not going to be like a micromanaged community, but I think that communities that are designed organically and not micromanaged tend to develop closer relationships and maximize happiness rather than isolation and separation. It sounds kind of commie-ish, I guess, but it's like, I think that that's what people are supposed to live in their tribe. They're supposed to be they're supposed to be communal to some degree. They're supposed to be helping each other. And I think that that's what is going to end up forming. But the ultimate goal is this will be my last point on this.
Oh.
The ultimate goal is there was this project that I used to follow, and they're still around, called Open Source Ecology. And their goal was to, this is how old it is. Their goal was to make everything that you need to start a civilization on a CD. So it had designs to build CNC machines, designs to make aluminum extractors so that you could extract aluminum from the soil to build the CNC machine, brick presses, how to make a modular engine so that you could move it from tractor to tractor or different types of equipment. So everything on it was modular so that all the parts could be interchanged and all that sort of stuff. So it was designed to how you would start up a town if you had almost nothing, or like a village. And my idea is something similar, but it's going to be more of like a legal technical thing. Is it'll be like open source Chillderburg town. So it's like, this is what worked. These are the legal struggles that we had. These are the structural struggles that we had building this. This is what worked for us. Tweak it and do what you want with it, but it's open source. It's like it's very detailed how everything was achieved, what went right, what went wrong. And it turns out there's other people working on these very similar things and are a little bit further along than I am. So I'm going to be relying on reading their resources. The legality in Texas is a little bit different than other states, but Texas, we were originally thinking about doing it in New Mexico, but Texas actually has laws that are specifically designed for this.
Nice.
They're called like freedom towns or freedom zones or something like that. So I think it's going to be good here in Texas. Plus, my wife and I've done a lot of driving around during COVID to like different places, and I just feel good here in Texas. Like with a lot of the way that people react to masks and things like that. So that's kind of the ultimate goal, is to make it replicatable. And I wouldn't say proof of concept, because I think it's going to be like the 100-year project. It's going like in 100 years, my guess is I'll still be alive, or at least I expect to be. I'm one of those people who thinks I'm probably going to live into my 200s, but I think it's going to be around. I fully expect to still live there and be in a little suburban, actually not even suburban, but just like a small town. Last thing. I think because of everything that's happened as a result of COVID, I think that we're going to go back to small towns. That's another thing. I think that's what we're going to be returning to. So that's
No, I think, and you're talking about not micromanaging, right? And I think when you think about your garden, right? Think about your I can grow my plants in rows and weed it and do everything I want. And I can get something out of it. But if I go and I build a food forest, I have to do a lot less, and I can still get food out of it. And I don't have to dump chemicals on it, and I don't have to do all this stuff to it. And, it's kind of like, you have an HOA, you could go join an HOA, but again, it's this like micromanaged thing, and like you get something out of it. But when you let things sort of not necessarily develop on their own, but kind of, build on themselves, I know, I think you get something a little more sustainable. I'm very curious to see kind of how it plays out.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I mean, I don't know. And it's scary. It's scary with this idea of people, cities and moving back to small towns. 'Cause man, it's like, I'm out in the country now, and like, I'm already like seeing it happen, people moving out of Atlanta and coming down, and I have no problem with, except that, you bring all those other values and things that made you want to leave Atlanta with you. And it's like, man, come on.
Yeah. Well, I think to some degree that's going to start out. That's going to be there. But like the realities of living in a small town or rural just make it so you can't keep a lot of those values anymore, because you're not anonymous. That's, I think, one of the biggest problems with the city, is that you're just one in a million. Whereas in a town, like if you do something that's harmful to other people in a small town, everybody knows. And they deal with it. They figure out, they deal with it one way or the other. And so I think that a lot of the values that come, like, I mean, just even like things like, oh, we'll just raise taxes, or we'll just tax those rich guys or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, in a city, there's, 100,000 rich guys, and 900,000, if it's a small city, 1 million people, there's just the percentages are so different, and it just becomes amorphous blobs. Whereas in a town, if one guy is successful, it's in his interest to do things that help out the community because he benefits from that too. But also, if you are violent and trying to steal stuff from some guy who's in the town, who provides many people in the town a job directly, and does things for the town directly, it's very clear who you're hurting at that point. And and I think that's kind of one of the problems that we have in modern society, is that because things have gotten so big, because all this sort of political structure has been filed or filtered up to, or funnel's the word, has been funneled up to the federal level. It's just, everything's become a demographic blob. It's like, when Bernie Sanders gets up on stage and is like, we're going to tax the millionaires, scratch that. We're going to tax the billionaires and the trillionaires because he's a millionaire now. So you don't want to tax them. When he says that that's what we're going to do, it doesn't mean anything. But if you're like, we're going to take away 50% of Joe down the street who picked you up when you fell off your bike and skinned up your chin, and built that park down the street that you played in as a kid, and funded that hospital. And when you were down on your luck and you needed somebody to cover your grocery bill that month, he was there and helped you out. He's part of your church. He's part of your local Lions Club. All that sort of stuff. It's a lot more difficult to say we're going to take away 50% of what he has than when it comes to sort of this amorphous blob of the millionaires and billionaires, because the millionaires and billionaires, it's just, you don't know what they're doing. They're this like other or whatever to you. But in reality, first of all, being a millionaire, there's a big difference between having $1 million and having $500 million.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. So a millionaire, like, what does that even mean? But secondly, like I worked for millionaires when I probably work for millionaires now. I'm not really sure. I don't know who owns our company now, but like when I lived in Virginia Beach, I worked in a small company, and they were millionaires, but they were part of the community. Like if you were like, I'm going to take away 50% of what they have, you're taking money away from the food bank. You're taking money away from basically every Jewish charity in town, because they were Jewish. And they gave lots of money to the charities. They were doing well. And anytime they did well, everybody did well.
Right.
And because they were very involved in the town, but as a class of people, they're just in a category with a whole bunch of other people. So you don't know what you're taking away when you say we're going to tax them at 50% or whatever it is. Yeah. But in a small town, in a small community, it's much more difficult to do that and say, we're taking away all this money from somebody, when you're like, yeah, but that guy is he's successful. He provides a whole bunch of people. There's a reason why people are successful. And sometimes it's nefarious, but most of the time it's because they worked, not necessarily worked hard, but worked intelligently and provided something that was of value to somebody. But they also are part of a larger structure. And when you're pulling bricks out of a larger structure and you don't know what those bricks are supporting and that sort of stuff, you end up getting these collapses. And I think that's going to be beneficial as well. I mean, you're always going to end up with some people who are better off than other people. But I think in a small community, it just works out better.
Yeah, that's a good point there. And it is, it's tough because it's one of those things when you think about like a town, right? Like, and taxes and property taxes to some degree there. But like when you look at the tax structure, right? How do you insulate from state taxes, from federal tax, right? How do you, so
in Texas, we don't have it. Yeah. We don't have any income tax here. We do have pretty substantial property tax though. The way that CeeLo does it is they run a camp, that is profitable. And the camp, they use the proceeds from the camp to basically pay the property tax for the corporation. If they have a shortfall, they take donations from the community to try to even that out. And you can go look up their tax records. They're usually profitable. There's been a couple of years if you go back and look at their records and stuff like that where they're not, and they make up the shortfall somehow.
Good day.
But since they're a corporation, they can also write off. They can also write off losses differently than regular people could write off losses. So that's helpful. Our working plan right now is buying enough property that people can come and rent out hunting lodges or fishing lodges. And so Texas has the largest population of exotics in the country. People come down here all the time to go hunt exotics, and it's very lucrative, especially if you make it like a nice, luxurious hunting cabin, hunting lodge, and that sort of stuff. You can get, and then there's things like hogs. Here, in order for the population of hogs to stay stable and not grow in Texas, you would have to kill 70 million a year. And they kill about 30. So the hog population is just skyrocketing all the time. They're very destructive animals, but people come down here to hunt them. They're huge. And they have decent meat. Like it's wild hog meat, which is different than, your ham at the store or whatever. But it is good meat. You can eat it. So people do come down here. They also just fly helicopters through and just mow them down with automatic weapons, and then leave them. But people will pay for that. There's also, huge population of axis deer here. People like hunting those. Gazelle. Also the largest population of lions outside of Africa is here. Tigers, same thing. Like there's all sorts of weird. So and now most of those are not just wild on property, but there are a lot of exotics here that are just wild on property. Ibex. They're I don't know if they're actually ibex or if there's something else, but they're there's the sheep with the gigantic horns, mountain goats basically, and people love to hunt those. So that's kind of like one of the tax mitigation strategies that is kind of forming in my head, is that you run a profitable business that involves renting out cabins and hunting tags and things like that to people for the property. And then they come to your town, they spend money in the town, they go to the restaurants and all that sort of stuff. And that helps kind of offset the property cost. So there's also in Texas, if a lot of the land is not developed, that land is taxed as wild land. And I think this is true in a lot of states. So the tax is actually only applied to the land that people are living on. So you could have, there's a guy out there. I go plant grapes down near Marfa every year. And there's a guy I know down there who has a vineyard. And his neighbor owns 50 square miles of just.
That'd be awesome, right?
Yeah, that would be super cool. But his neighbor, he only pays taxes on about 100 acres, because the rest of it, he's not doing anything with it. It's just nature, basically. So he is paying some taxes, but it's very, very low. It's at like the rate of farmland or something like that, which is also federally exempt from certain taxes and stuff like that. So like you get a lot of benefits to structuring it correctly. We're going to have to talk to a lawyer and stuff like that about a lot of this stuff, and probably have somebody under, retainer. But ultimately, I think that's going to be sort of the way it works. And I could be wrong on some of this stuff. This is just kind of how like I'm seeing it right now, as sort of a layman trying to learn how to make this happen. But I've got 6 years to make it happen. and we're going to be there. We'll do it. And you're welcome to come and visit.
Yeah. I'll have to take you up on that.
Bring the family out.
Yeah. Maybe I'll leave some of them there with you.
All right.
So, oh man, there was something I was gonna. Oh yeah. So and I think I only listened to the last couple episodes. Have you been getting into this idea throughout the whole thing of the new pod, or? So
we started doing on one of the Discord groups that I'm in. There was just a lot of people who were kind of interested in this, and so what we decided to do is start doing an open 3-hour roundtable. So people who want to join can just join in and just give their 2 cents. It's mostly been Agora Brewing and myself. The last 2 episodes, we had some other people on the first episode. The California in Exile podcast was supposed to be me going over California news on like a semi-weekly basis, but there's so much news from California, and it's all just so bleak. I just didn't like. I stopped wanting to do it, and I also this last couple of weeks I've been swamped, so I just haven't had a chance to do a lot of record. I haven't even released my primary podcast in like 3 weeks. And I have episodes recorded. I just haven't edited them and put them up yet. But so once I get back kind of into a good flow, the California in Exile, the goal was to do 20-minute segments, just covering some thing that's going on in California, and it was kind of designed to highlight why people are leaving. So like my wife, she's just kind of, she's from Ukraine, but I'm from California, and I talk about California all the time. Like, and it's because it's in the news all the time. And like something will come up and it'll be like, Gavin Newsom makes everybody stand on their head. And I'm like, this is exactly why they're all leaving from there and coming here. This is why we don't live there. And the thing is, I love California. It's beautiful. The weather is great in almost the entire state. There's few places on earth where you can go skiing in the morning and surfing in the evening. It's there. Everything is just spaced out that way. It's a really great place, and I love it. And the reason I call it the California Exile, I feel like I was kicked out. A lot of my sisters moved. I have 4 sisters. 3 of them moved back to California, but it's not easy. It's a struggle to live there. You're taxed to death. Property is like my sister's house up in I won't dox her. We're from Northern California, so a different part of California than what people normally think about. But even in that part of California, just up in the mountains there, she's got kind of a cool property. I think she's got like 4 or 5 acres, but just that property for the exact same type of property with probably more land use out here is about a quarter of the cost as there. And it's not a great area. It's nice. I mean, it's very pretty. I like it a lot, but it's not upscale or anything like that. But it's just everything's expensive.
Shouldn't demand that price. Yeah.
No, it shouldn't.
And that's like I grew up in New York, and like upstate New York is totally different than downstate. It was a couple hours, an hour and a half outside of the Adirondack Mountains, it's like the biggest park this side of the Mississippi. It's just like I feel like I can't do what I want to do up there. If I lived there, I could make ends meet. We would be okay. But your quality of living would just
dramatically lower.
And it's like, I would love to go back and live up there. It's what I know. That's home, but like I can't. I've been,
yeah, and it's exactly how I felt about Northern California. And they keep what's funny about my sisters is they keep getting chased further and further into the mountains. So like at this point, they're almost in Nevada because it's just like something happens. They have to move further up the hill. Mm-hmm. And so like we grew up in a town called El Dorado Hills, which is like right at the start of the foothills up into the Sierra Nevadas. And then my oldest sister moved back. She moved up one town because El Dorado Hills became just insanely expensive. My grandma's the house that we grew up in is like $1 million now or something crazy. Like I don't know the exact price, but it's ludicrous how expensive it is. And it's not a huge house. It's not a new house. If they bought the house, they'd probably bulldoze it and put a new house up. But my older sister, she had to move up to one town. Then that town became unaffordable. She had to move up to another town. That town became unaffordable. Now she's up even further up in the mountain. Now she's in the mountains. She's not in the hills anymore. We're hill people. We grew up in the hills, and now she's up in the mountains where we don't belong. We belong in the hills. So, but it's too expensive down there anymore. And it's sad. Like we had a multi-generational house, and I don't think when my grandma passes away, I don't think that we're going to be able to keep the house. It's just the taxes. She's still there because they get special tax breaks for seniors. But once one of us has the house, the taxes will be so outrageous. I don't think it's possible to keep it. And
sad to see that stuff happen.
They're actually, and fortunately it was defeated. I covered this on one of the episodes, but there is, I think it's Prop 13. Prop 13 freezes property taxes in California, and they tried to repeal a part of it this year. So like on top of having the highest income tax rate in the country, they were going to repeal the property tax, which is among the lowest currently. They actually have one of the lowest property because it was frozen at, I think 1% of purchase value, adjusted by 2% every certain number of years or something like that. I don't remember exactly the formula, but it was basically made it so that your taxes were extremely low, your property taxes. And they were trying to get rid of the commercial portion of that. So commercial taxes are also frozen that way. It was defeated, which was good. But what's funny is when you dig into that law, the way that they phrased commercial property, or the way that they categorized commercial property, was like basically all the farms. So like these people who own thousands of acres of farmland, just their taxes would just go through the roof. And there's been a big fight in the more rural parts of California, particularly Central Valley, between the ever expanding Bay Area. This is the big concern from where I'm from, is the Bay Area is 3 or 4 hours away from where I grew up. And it's just, it's expanding. It is encroaching further and further in. And the appetite of the, like the resource appetite of a growing metropolis is especially in a place that it has, water issues already. It's things like water, food, all sorts of electricity. Like they'd rather keep the electricity on in San Francisco than the electricity on in, some small town. Some small town. And then on top of that, make it illegal to build new nuclear power plants, make it illegal to build new oil power plants, make it illegal for coal, like all of these things, which I to some degree agree with. Like I at least I think there should be liabilities for the pollution. But just we're making all these things illegal, but we have nothing to replace it. And the cleanest thing that we could replace it, we also made that illegal. Yeah. Yep.
It's a beautiful circle. It's a beautiful thing they have going on there. And it's not just California, unfortunately. It's like
I think there's a sickness in our society, and I think it's I think the fever is going to break, and people will. I think my dad always, when I was a kid, he used to say, "I can't imagine the pendulum in California swinging any further left." And boy was he surprised. But I think there is at some point, like it is a pendulum to some degree. And what they say is like, easy times breeds soft men is one of those things. And what, California has had it good, and it's had it good in a lot of ways. Like the weather there is almost perfect. Like it's just so easy to live there. It's been extremely wealthy. It's been the number one economy in the United States for 50 years or something crazy like that. It's just been so easy and so good there for so long that it's just made a state of extremely soft people. But with all of the mounting problems that just keep building up, the homelessness, the power issues, the resource issues, the water issues, it's just one thing on top of another. And eventually, when the easy money breaks, I think that's when California is probably going to break, and it'll swing back, and it'll go back to kind of a rural state like it should be. I mean, it's the most productive farmland in the country, and they're covering it with concrete to put up skyscrapers to, make puppandsuds.com or whatever that is valued at $3 trillion, even though they've never turned a profit. Like all these kind of crazy things. I mean, it's insane looking at it. And you look at it and you go, there's just no way this can continue to work forever. At some point, it's going to have to revert.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that's one of those things. It's just because it's like, like you have the pendulum swing, but I think at the same time as the pendulum swinging, like it's knocking people out of the way. The people that have been dragging the pendulum, it's knocking them out of the way, and they're all scattering everywhere else. And that's like when I say like people moving out of the city, that's like, I really want it to swing back, but I'm not sure that it will. Right. It's almost like it's going to, instead of swinging back, it's going to go all the way around full circle until it comes back, and that's what I'm like, oh man. But
I'm very encouraged by history. I mean, the Soviet Union broke up peacefully. And the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, they broke up peacefully. The Kingdom of Denmark broke, or actually, I guess it was the Kingdom of Sweden, broke into Norway and Sweden peacefully. Like things do change, and they do change for the better. It's not always violent. It's easy to focus on the violent and the destruction, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, for all of the people that were in the Soviet Union, once that broke up, life was demonstrably better for 99% of the people there. I mean, like it was a huge change. If North Korea's regime collapsed or whatever, yeah, there's probably going to be some chaos, but for all of those people who are currently basically slaves, it's going to be better. In the United States, I mean, we've had it good for a really long time, but it's, and I don't like to knock. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Americana. I love this. I love the country as far as the people go and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a great place, but we've really been living at the expense of everybody else since World War II. And we've had really good lives, and we've had time to build up a lot of capital. So I think the landing for us will be very soft no matter what happens. There's just too much capital investment in the country for it to be terrible. It'll be a struggle, but it's not going to be like, you're not going to be living in like Ghana or something like that. It's not going to change that drastically.
We're not going to get Somalia.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not going to be that. But which actually, even after that's another good example. After the collapse of the government of Somalia, it was better for most people. Even though I always talk about it being chaotic or whatever, like death rates are down, life expectancy is up, people have more access to water and technology and food and all that sort of stuff. It's not great. I wouldn't want to live there, but it's better. So. Right.
Yep.
So I'm very optimistic.
It's you are a very, very positive person. I appreciate that. So, tell us where to go to find your show, or give it a listen if people are curious about these ideas. I'm sure it's in lots of people's domes right now.
Yeah. So California in Exile, you can just do a quick Google search for that. It's on a lot of the podcatchers. I think it's on Apple and Stitcher and several others. It's on Anchor. That's where I publish it. You can also follow California Exile. I don't post a huge amount on it, but there's a California Exile on Twitter. I usually post the episodes when they come out there. Once in a while, I'll retweet stuff from California, just news and things like that. There's a lot of people in the Liberty movement who are also California in Exile. So I'm going to try to be doing a little bit more like interviews and stuff like that for people that are involved in the Liberty movement that left, or people who are still there and just why they're still there. And there's a lot, and I'll admit there's a lot of good reasons to still be in California. So, it's just a value assessment, I guess. So, Misesian subjective theory of value. So, but yeah, so on Twitter, you can also follow me at Tasting Anarchy or at Chillderburg on Twitter. You can go to chillderburg.com or tastinganarchy.com and catch Chillderburg just for Chillderburg information if you're interested in coming out to Chillderburg this year. And Tasting Anarchy is my other podcast. It's we do talk a lot about California on it because it's a wine-centered podcast, but it is just generally wine and how the government. Our slogan is "How much government is in your drink," and it's a lot. And we'll tell you how that happened and what's going on in wine and alcohol.
Good deal. Good deal. I appreciate your time. Thank you for talking. Kind of wandered there, but it was very fruitful for myself at least. So appreciate that.
I hope people enjoy it. I enjoy talking.
Yeah. Hey, all good stuff. All right, guys, there it is, episode number 111 in the books. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot there to unpack, a lot of things to think about. And for some of us, we can't move. We're not moving. And it's a little further out there. For some of us, it is a possibility. And either way you cut it, there's a lot of meat on that bone to talk about, chew on, and figure out. And I think it's something we all need to kind of look at and consider. You want to build a healthy community, and that starts with the foundation, and lay that foundation, make yourself part of that foundation, get in there and build it from the ground up, and see where it takes you. But that's all for now, and I appreciate you guys sticking around and giving it a listen. Come back next week, we'll have another show. Not sure what it will be on just yet, but it will be on something. And I appreciate your time. Get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together.